May 24th, here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with South Korea taking on the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council. For the first time in a decade, Seoul will hold the presidency for 1 month in June. South Korea is expected to push for discussions on cybersecurity, especially against growing threats coming from North Korea. Leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China are holding their first summit in 4.5 years in the coming week here in Seoul. The presidential office is hopeful of restoring trilateral cooperation. The South Korean government's push for the expansion of the medical school admissions quota will be finalized later today, marking the first such hike in nearly 30 years. South Korea is taking on the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council next month for the first time in 10 years. Seoul is set to push for public discussions on cybersecurity, a topic that hasn't been covered by the official UNSC agenda previously. Lee Seung-jae has more.
For the first time in a decade, South Korea is set to hold the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council next month. South Korea, which is a non-permanent UNSC member, will chair the council for 1 month as the council's 15 member states rotate on a monthly basis. During a press meeting, Seoul's top envoy to the UN, Hwang Jun-guk, said undertaking the presidency is an important role in coordinating the UNSC agenda, adding that South Korea will be ready to convene a UNSC meeting in the event of a provocation by North Korea. Hwang emphasized that the role of the chairing country is important as it affects the direction of discussions on key global issues and international opinion. During its month-long presidency, South Korea will seek to hold high-level public discussions on the topic of cybersecurity. Seoul has been heavily focused on such issues due to evolving threats by Pyongyang in the security domain. For this, Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol plans to preside over the session. South Korea's top envoy to the UN stressed that malicious cyber activities on key infrastructure and theft of civilian data and cryptocurrency are threats that all countries face. Hwang added that despite the importance of cybersecurity, the topic has not been dealt with as an official UNSC agenda. Seoul also plans to hold public discussions under the theme Child and Armed Conflicts at the request of the UN Secretariat. The ambassador expressed his hope that South Korea's presidency will contribute to the nation's push to expand its diplomatic horizons and emerge as a global pivotal state. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China will gather for the first time in more than 4 years on Monday here in Seoul. A meeting that Seoul's top office believes will serve as a turning point to bring their relations back to normal. Our senior correspondent Oh Seong reports.
South Korea, Japan, and China will hold their first trilateral summit in over 4 years, with the aim of fully restoring and normalizing their three-way cooperation on trade, climate response, and interpersonal exchanges. Kim Tae-yeol, South Korea's principal deputy national security advisor on Thursday, said President Yoon will hold three-way talks on Monday with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Chinese Premier Li Qiang. The three are expected to focus on 6 main areas of cooperation, including people-to-people exchanges, climate change and sustainable development, health and aging demographics, as well as science and technology and disaster and safety response. According to a presidential official, their talks will be concluded with a joint statement, with Yoon, Kishida and Qiang possibly holding a joint press conference.
The Trilateral Summit will serve as a turning point to completely restore and normalize the three-way cooperation system. It will also serve as an opportunity to secure momentum for future-orientated and practical cooperation that will benefit the people of the three countries.
The three-way talks, stalled since December 2019, come amid strained relations over a number of bilateral disputes, on top of tensions in the Indo-Pacific region as the United States and China engage in geopolitical competition. After South Korea and Japan took major steps to patch up their differences last year and restored bilateral trade and security ties, Seoul has been pushing to revive their three-way talks with Beijing. While Yoon, Kishida and Qiang will also discuss regional issues and ways to respond to complex global crises, a presidential official told reporters they are unlikely to focus on contentious issues. These include North Korea's weapons cooperation with Russia and the possibility of Seoul and Tokyo joining the Security Pact by Australia, the United Kingdom and the US. Before the highly anticipated talks, the South Korean leader will hold separate summits with his counterparts on Sunday afternoon before a welcoming banquet. Yoon and Chang will discuss strengthening strategic communication after months-long tension between the two countries, along with trade, investment and cultural ties. With Kishida, Yoon will address Korean Peninsular affairs, as well as regional and global issues, as well as their trilateral cooperation with the United States. Observers believe bilateral tensions over messenger app Line may also be raised. Under the mantra of South Korea, Japan, China plus X, Yoon's office says the three countries will aim to expand their scope of cooperation beyond Northeast Asia to the wider Indo-Pacific as well as the global level. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
And following the trilateral meeting, President Yoon will also be hosting UAE's president and dozens of leaders from Africa for a broader cooperation with Korea. Now, Korea-Africa Summit will be Yoon's biggest multilateral summit. Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
It's set to be the biggest welcoming ceremony hosted by President Yoon Suk-yeol. Next Tuesday, the president of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, will arrive in Seoul for a two-day state visit, the first by a UAE president. According to the top office on Thursday, it'll include a Black Eagle air show, more than 600 military personnel, and 160 children.
When President Yoon Suk-yeol and his spouse made a state visit to the UAE in January last year, they were given a grand welcome at an official presidential welcoming ceremony with a large cavalry and camel troops lined up. Similarly, on May 28, when the UAE president enters Korean airspace, we will also mobilize the highest level of courtesy and conduct various official welcoming ceremonies.
There will be various diplomatic events on top of an official summit at the Yongsan presidential office on Wednesday. The two countries have long enjoyed good cooperation, with the UAE being South Korea's only special strategic partnership country in the Middle East. In fact, during President Yoon's state visit to Abu Dhabi last year's January, the UAE pledged a $30 billion investment into South Korea.
The leaders of both countries plan to discuss concrete measures to elevate their cooperation to a higher level in the four key areas established during President Yoon's state visit to the UAE in January last year: traditional energy and clean energy, peaceful nuclear energy, economy and investment, and defense technology.
This state visit is highly anticipated. It was supposed to happen last October, but due to Hamas' surprise attack on Israel causing uncertainties in the Middle East, the UAE postponed. In the meantime, the upcoming Korea-Africa Summit, which will follow the UAE Summit, will be the biggest multilateral summit hosted by President Yoon. It's set to happen on June 4th and 5th. There will be 45 or more African nations coming to South Korea for the first summit of its kind.
This will serve as an opportunity to strengthen political, economic and social solidarity with African countries and to build favorable and practical cooperation in various economic security fields, particularly in key minerals, infrastructure, renewable energy, digital agriculture, health and tourism.
Under the national vision of becoming a global pivotal state, the Yoon Suk-yeol administration has emphasized strategic cooperation with the Global South, including Africa, since its early days. The top office says, adding to the Korea-Pacific Islands Summit last year, the Korea-Africa Summit will further expand the nation's strategic cooperation with the Global South. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The first medical school admission seats hike in nearly 3 decades will finally be realized here in Korea later this afternoon. The Korea Council for University Education is set to approve the proposed expansion for the coming year. Our Choi Min-jung tells us more.
The government's plan to raise the medical school admission quota is set to be officially confirmed on Friday afternoon at a meeting held by the Korean Council for University Education. During the meeting, the Council will deliberate over and confirm changes to the 2025 college admissions plan submitted by each university. Accordingly, this will mark the first medical quota increase in 27 years. The final results of the meeting will be announced on May 30th, and universities will announce updated admissions guidelines by the 31st. The government's stance is that there will no longer be room for negotiation for change in the future if the plan is confirmed. However, some national universities have been rebelling against the government's plan by refusing to reflect the quota hike in their school regulation amendments. The Education Ministry explained that this will not have any impact. The Medical Professors Association for Korea also plans to hold a press conference in front of the Supreme Court on Friday to oppose the plan and submit a petition. There have been strong protests from people within the medical community against expanding medical school admissions since the plan was announced on February 20th. More than 90% of resident doctors have left their workplaces, and almost 3,000 residents are no longer eligible for next year's certification exam. Medical school professors have also submitted resignations or leave of absence requests. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
Korean dramas on over-the-top media services are keeping viewers across the globe satisfied and entertained, especially in the month of May. What's so special about them? We're joined by Jason Veschervase. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I have to say, the drama Queen of Tears and Lovely Runner have been by far the most popular K-dramas in the first half of 2024. Please do introduce us briefly to what these dramas are about for our viewers who haven't heard of them.
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting year because we've got two Korean dramas that are performed, very, very well on local streaming platforms and television or cable channels. We've got Queen of Tears, which, centers on a chaebol heiress and the relationships that she develops with the son of farmers, who's, very, very talented. And it reached a rating of 24.8%. Moving past or surpassing Crash Landing on You, and making it, the highest or third highest rated series on cable TV. So, you can always tell a show that's doing well. You walk around, you can hear songs and the OST kind of blaring onto the streets. And, that's very much the case here. It's the talk of the town. Everyone's been talking about it. And, this was produced by one of the local studios here in Korea, one of the main or major companies that have been hugely instrumental to Korea's kind of growth in K content over the last 2 decades. And then we've got Lovely Runner as well, which stars Byung Seok and Kim Yoon, which is also doing very well. It's somewhat different because this show, it hasn't attracted the same kind of ratings, but the fandom has been, it's been truly extraordinary. It's certainly attracting those in their 30s and their 40s as well. It's based on a web novel called Tomorrow's Best. It was also serialized as a webtoon, underscoring the sheer popularity of web comics and novels that are frequently being used to produce content, particularly by the streaming services. And it has all the ingredients that you associate with Korean dramas. You've got attractive leads, tragedy, time travel and nostalgia. It follows this woman. She's an aspiring film director. Tragedy strikes, and she finds solace in the songs of this particular singer. And then he finds himself in a tragic accident, and they're able to kind of basically go back in time. And so, what I'm noticing here is that these are the kind of shows that have traditionally done quite popular in Korea. Certainly with regards to Queen of Tears, which looks at kind of social classes, romances, and this is a kind of a genre that's done very well, spanning many years. And more recently, we've seen kind of the more genre-driven stuff. So I think it's quite telling now that we're seeing kind of broadly two different trends. We're seeing the genre-driven content that has been very popular on Netflix. Squid Game is a great example of that. And then we're also seeing the kind of the local streamers kind of fighting back with content that has been popular in Korea and overseas for a long time. And that's what we're seeing with Lovely Runner and Queen of Tears.
Right, these are, you said it, traditional and nostalgia-driven dramas that are not too mind-blowing. But how are they so popular in other countries? I mean, they have been popular here in the country, but how's that working in other countries?
Yeah, no, I mean, with regards to Hallyu, I mean, if you look at the popularity of Hallyu over the last 2 decades, I mean, it started essentially in Asia. And so these are the kind of shows that I think have done quite well in, you know, Southeast Asia and throughout the whole region. And that's true here. We're seeing particularly Lovely Runner kind of being #1 on one of the streaming platforms, Viki, in several different countries, and not just Asia, actually. I mean, that's the great thing about Korean content. You know, it was Squid Game, it was Parasite, and, you know, before that, Train to Busan. You know, it was kind of show or movies or shows that were very much kind of reliant on genre to kind of really kind of carry the story. But now, because of the popularity of other dramas and also the way algorithms work on these streaming platforms, is introducing a kind of range of kind of different content, Korean content to viewers overseas. And so, yeah, we even see these kind of shows, Lovely Runner, Queen of Tears, which have, you know, done quite popular, well, are very, very popular in Korea and have done so for years. We're seeing them kind of breaking through into overseas territories as well.
Right. We also have to talk about the newest Korean dramas on streaming services like Uncle Samsik and The 8 Show. Now, what's notable about these films is that the film directors are continuing to work on their miniseries. Let's talk about that. Is this a new trend?
Yes and no. I mean, it's new in a sense that this didn't happen 10, 15 years ago, but after Netflix kind of entered the system, you know, kind of entered the industry, it has completely transformed it. I mean, if you look at some of the most popular shows on Netflix, Squid Game, you know, is a great example. Hwang Dong-hyuk is he's a filmmaker. He made films such as The Fortress, Silence, Miss Granny, which actually was a film that, well, I mean, it was popular here, but the remakes broke out internationally. So, you know, we're seeing more of that now. You know, Han Jae-rim's new show, you know, I think has been quite, I mean, it's been really, The 8 Show has been quite interesting. I mean, it's kind of emulating very much to some extent the Squid Game. And then we have Uncle Samsik, which is directed by Shin Yeon-sik, who is a very famous writer in Korean cinema. He also directs films. He's behind movies such as The Avian Kind. He's actually worked quite a lot in independent cinema. So it's interesting that he's actually moving or migrated over to streaming platforms. And so that's something that has happened over the last few years, and we're seeing more of that. And you know, a lot of these shows, The 8 Show by Han Jae-rim, you know, again, you can just, I mean, you look at it, the production values are excellent. As with Uncle Samsik, you know, these shows are very handsomely produced. Clearly, these directors know exactly what they're doing. Right. And so they're kind of using their expertise that they've gained through working in the film industry for 2 decades or more. And they're bringing that to the streaming content and being able to kind of, I guess kind of raise the bar. I mean, we've seen that with, you know, American content years and years ago. You know, the Band of Brothers is a famous example. This kind of prestige content, you know, almost watching a movie for each episode that you watch of these shows, and that's true of very much The 8 Show and also Uncle Samsik, you know, Squid Game and various others as well.
All right, let's do binge watch this weekend. Thank you, Jason, so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
The The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission on Thursday approved the listing of Ethereum spot ETFs, potentially allowing trading later this year. While Thursday's announcement is a major step forward for the second largest cryptocurrency by market cap, the regulator must approve the S1 filings of ETF issuers before investors can actually buy them. The listing of the Ethereum spot ETF was filed by several asset management companies, including BlackRock. The decision also comes about 4 months after the Bitcoin spot ETF was approved back in January.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and now we turn off to stories from around the world. We begin today in the North Mexico state of Nuevo León, where a stage collapse at a political campaign event on Wednesday evening killed 9 people and injured 50. The state's governor, Samuel Garcia, said on social media that 8 adults and 1 child have died, while many more needed surgery or treatment at local clinics. The collapse happened in the city of San Pedro Garza Garcia at an event attended by Jorge Alvarez Maynez, the presidential candidate for the centrist Citizens Movement Party. He said in an interview that the accident was unexpected, saying a gale came, a sudden wind, and unfortunately it collapsed the stage, resulting in a fatal accident. Video footage shows the stage structure suddenly falling forward toward the crowd. Mexico's Interior Minister said that the armed forces were at the scene to provide support, while Governor Garcia warned residents to keep safe from strong thunderstorms in the area. Now to the US, where a political consultant has been fined $6 million for being behind automated calls that used artificial intelligence to impersonate American President Joe Biden's voice. 54-year-old Steve Kramer, a veteran political consultant who mainly worked for Democrats, was indicted in New Hampshire by Federal Communications Commission on Thursday for scam calls he set up to defraud voters in violation of a federal caller ID law. New Hampshire's Attorney General charged Kramer with 13 misdemeanor counts of impersonation of a candidate and 13 felony counts of voter suppression. The robocall reportedly went out to thousands of New Hampshire voters in January, just before the state's first presidential primary, and told voters to stay home and save their votes for the November election. To the UK now, where a Member of Parliament received praise from the Prime Minister and a standing ovation from colleagues after he returned to office after losing his hands and feet to sepsis. 57-year-old MP Craig McKinley returned to Parliament on Wednesday, 5 months after his arms and legs were amputated. He had spent 16 days in an induced coma after he began to feel unwell last September. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak praised McKinley, calling him an inspiration, while Speaker Lindsay Hoyle made an exception to allow clapping in Parliament. McKinley said he wanted to be known as the first bionic MP, as he was welcomed back to the House of Commons with prosthetic limbs. The European Space Agency on Thursday released new images taken by Euclid Space Telescope. Astronomers mapped dozens of rogue planets floating in space using the Euclid Space Telescope to study a distant region of the Milky Way. Images include the star-forming region Messier 78 in the Orion constellation, shrouded in interstellar dust, as well as Abell 2390, a giant conglomeration of more than 50,000 Milky Way-like galaxies. Coming less than a year since the Euclid Space Telescope was launched, the ESA called the 5 images unprecedented and a treasure trove. The ESA launched the billion-dollar observatory project last year with a 6-year mission to create a 3-dimensional map of the cosmos.
Good morning. Depending on what parts of the country you'll be in, you'll have either a rainy day or sunny summer conditions, or neither. Starting with the rain, eastern parts of the country will see spotty showers and passing rain with thunderstorms, but Jeollado provinces and parts of Gyeongsangdo will have more summer warms with strong UV rays. Afternoon highs will be hovering above 30 degrees Celsius with sunshine. The east coast will see highs in the upper teens today with that rainfall. Meanwhile, the capital area will be cloudy and breezy, taking a nice break from the sunshine and the heat today. Seoul gets up to 25, Gwangju topping out at 30 degrees Celsius. Gyeongju will have highs that are 10 degrees lower than yesterday at 23 degrees. And tomorrow looks to be a cloudy one as well. Then there's rain in the forecast on Sunday afternoon from the capital, spreading to the rest of the country through early Monday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day and Arirang. We'll be back next Monday at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.